Augustine Distillery on, where they were kicking off a brand new bourbon. It's the first time that it's actually been made since Prohibition. And September is National Bourbon Month, and we have an expert on the line right now to tell us all about it. Please welcome Morgan Murphy to the show. Morgan, welcome to River City Live.
Hey, awesome to be here.
So how do you become a bourbon expert to begin with? What kind of background do you have?
You drink a lot. That makes you an expert.
That was the answer I was looking for. All right, so there is a rich history with bourbon in America. Can you explain that and how it evolved?
Well, bourbon is America's native spirit. It is the only spirit that really is unique to our country. You can get gin from England or vodka from Russia, but to be bourbon, it has to be made here in America, has to be 51% corn, which is our native grain, and it must be aged in an American white oak barrel. And that's what makes it bourbon.
All right, and let's do this. Let's break down the different drinks, okay? Because it all kind of evolved from the same place. So what is moonshine, what is bourbon, and then what is whiskey? Can you just break those down and how they kind of evolved?
Sure.
They went their own way.
Yeah, so all bourbon is whiskey. So you've heard of Scotch whiskey and Irish whiskey, Canadian whiskey. Well, bourbon is simply America's version of whiskey. But not all whiskey is bourbon. So Scotch, if you make it outside the United States, you can't call it bourbon. If you don't use, like I mentioned before, 51% corn, you can't call it bourbon. If you add any artificial ingredients or you don't do it the natural way, you can't call it bourbon. The difference between bourbon and moonshine, well, moonshine starts off clear, right? Just like vodka or gin. What gives bourbon its color is putting that moonshine in a barrel for 2, 5, 10, 20 years. That's what makes it bourbon. If you're a moonshiner, you probably don't have time to sit around and wait for your bourbon to age that long.
Now, here's a question. What can you pair with bourbon? Like, what type of food?
Well, you know, I think bourbon is getting so popular these days because it's a foodie's drink. It has a distinct, really robust flavor that you can taste. Even after you cook with it, you're not boiling out all the taste. With bourbon, it retains that flavor of the barrel, and so it lends itself to like a cocktail. You can make a great cocktail like this Manhattan here. Manhattan's a long history is a very elegant cocktail made with bourbon. It's just a little sweeter. It's made with sweet vermouth and bourbon and a little touch of bitters. Or a favorite of mine is really simple. It's just ginger ale and bourbon. I've used an Alabama ginger ale here called Buffalo Rock, which is really fiery, and an Alabama bourbon called Clyde Mays. And the two of those together are just, well, it's a fireball of a drink. I call it the Alabama Slammer. And then
I've had that before. Here. I've had the Alabama Slammer before.
You've had that before?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's a goodie. It's a goodie.
It's a classic.
If you have more than one, you might not have remembered it. But then I love a peach cocktail. That's another southern ingredient that goes really well with bourbon is peaches. You just muddle it in the bottom of a glass, add a little simple syrup and soda and bourbon, of course, and it makes for a killer cocktail. People who don't even like bourbon love that one. Or this is the Drunken Arnold Palmer. It's just iced tea, lemonade, and bourbon. They go great together. You can make it up by the gallon if it's just you, or if you're entertaining for a party by the barrel. And then food-wise, you've got like a barbecue, and this is tailgating season right now. People are cracking open their pits for the barbecue, watching football. And I do it sounds a little odd, but I do a bourbon barbecue apple sauce, right, that goes on top of ribs and barbecue sandwiches. And I'll tell you, the other team will be running for your plate if you start firing
delicious.
This up at the tailgate.
Hey, Morgan, where can we go for more information and recipes?
Sure. For more information, you can go to ClydeMays.com.
All right, Morgan. Hey, thanks again for your time. Appreciate it.
Hey, awesome to be here. Cheers.
All right.